Imagine a complete city, state-of-the-art hospitals, shopping malls ready to operate, 8-lane avenues perfectly paved, parks with impeccable landscaping, everything new, everything working, everything empty. No cars on the streets, no pedestrians on the sidewalks, no children in the parks, no life. These cities exist. And they are not one or two. There are dozens spread across China, thousands of buildings, millions of apartments, billions of dollars invested, and almost no one living there. At first glance, it looks like madness, a colossal planning error, an absurd waste of public resources. But what if I told you this is intentional, that there is a method behind this apparent chaos? And that some of these ghost cities today are completely full? Welcome to the largest urban experiment in modern history. Let's understand what is really happening in China. The story begins in 2010. Western journalists arrive in Ordos Kangbashi in China's Inner Mongolia and encounter the impossible. An ultra-modern metropolis built to house 1 million people had fewer than 30,000 residents. Empty residential buildings stretched for kilometers, deserted squares, a massive museum with no visitors, shopping malls with no shopkeepers. The headlines were immediate and alarming: the world's largest ghost city. And Ordos was not alone. 200 kilometers from Shanghai, an exact replica of Paris was built. Tianducheng has a 108-meter-tall Eiffel Tower, boulevards inspired by the Champs-Élysées, decorative fountains, and detailed Parisian architecture. It was designed for 100,000 people. In its early years, it had fewer than 2,000. There was also Yujiapu, nicknamed the Chinese Manhattan, with replicas of iconic New York skyscrapers. An ambitious financial center that remained practically abandoned for years after construction was completed. And Thames Town, an English-style town transplanted near Shanghai. English pubs with no customers, empty red phone booths, cobblestone streets with no pedestrians. Only brides doing photo shoots in European-style settings. These images went around the world. The narrative was set. China was wasting resources, building empty cities out of pride, political propaganda, or miscalculation. Western commentators mocked it. Economists predicted collapse. It seemed like definitive proof that centralized planning does not work. But there was something almost no one asked at the time. What if the right question was not, why are these cities empty? But rather, why were they built before having residents? Here is the crucial point that most international reports fail to explain. China is not building empty cities by accident or incompetence. It is following a radically different model from the Western model of urban growth. In the West, cities grow organically. It starts with a small settlement. Gradually, more people arrive, buildings emerge, commerce develops, and only later, usually with significant delay, does infrastructure try to catch up. The result? Chaotic traffic, overloaded sewage systems, lack of schools and hospitals, slums, disordered growth that takes decades to fix when it is fixed at all. China simply inverted this logic. The government decides where a new city should emerge, usually for strategic reasons, to decentralize populations from saturated megacities, develop poor interior regions, or create industrial and technological hubs. Then it builds all the infrastructure at once: equipped hospitals, universities with laboratories, fully operational metro systems, parks ready to use. All before the first family moves in. Then come the incentives. State-owned companies are ordered to transfer their headquarters. Public universities are relocated. Government offices move. This creates jobs, and where there are jobs, people follow, gradually, over 10, 15, sometimes 20 years. Does it seem crazy? Consider the numbers. Between 1980 and 2024, China moved more than 500 million people from the countryside to cities. That is equivalent to creating an entire New York every 3 months for 40 consecutive years. It is the largest human migration in history. If they tried to do this in a gradual and organic way like in the West, chaos would be inevitable. Massive slums, sanitation collapse, permanent housing crises, Urban violence. China saw this happen in Mumbai, Mexico City, Lagos, Sao Paulo, and decided to do it differently, so they built the cities first, perfectly planned, with full infrastructure, and waited for people to arrive. That is the model. Controversial, yes. Expensive, extremely. But completely irrational, maybe not. But there is a second reason for these ghost cities, and this one is purely economic. For decades, the Chinese economy had one main engine: construction, not because of immediate housing needs, but as a growth strategy. Here is how it works. The central or provincial government invests heavily in building a new city. This immediately employs millions of people: laborers, engineers, architects, truck drivers, suppliers. It stimulates heavy industries like cement, steel, glass, aluminum. These factories buy raw materials, hire more workers, pay taxes, money circulates, the economy grows. In the 2000s and 2010s, up to 30% of China's GDP came directly or indirectly from construction. Building empty cities was not just futuristic urban planning. It was massive and deliberate economic stimulus. But there was another strategic benefit. China received trillions in foreign investment over decades. This ocean of money had to go somewhere. The Chinese government offered few investment options. The stock market was extremely volatile and tightly controlled. Banks paid low interest, and foreign investments were restricted. That left one obvious option: real estate. The result? Chinese middle-class families began buying apartments not to live in, but as investments. 2, 3, sometimes 5 apartments per family. Many in cities that did not even fully exist yet. It did not matter if they were empty. What mattered was that prices only went up. This fueled the construction boom for years. Developers made fortunes. Local governments sold land at extremely high prices, generating immediate revenue. Everyone won. For a while. Because there was a fundamental problem in this engine. Estimates from 2023 indicate that there are around 65 million empty apartments in China. Many have never been inhabited even once. They are there, intact, like financial assets made of concrete and glass. And when the music stopped, when prices began to fall in many regions, it became clear. A significant part of these ghost cities was not long-term urban planning. It was a speculative bubble. But here's what the international media rarely goes back to show. Many of the famous ghost cities stopped being ghosts. Ordos Kangbashi, the one that shocked the world in 2010 with only 30,000 inhabitants, now has more than 300,000 residents. Busy shopping malls, universities in full operation, rush hour traffic, real urban life. It took 15 years, but the plan worked. How? Massive government incentives, transfer of public agencies to the city, accelerated development of coal mines in the region, generating thousands of well-paid jobs, subsidies for companies to set up operations, and patience, a lot of patience. Zhengdong, a district of Zhengzhou that in 2010 was mocked as a ghost city, now has 1.5 million inhabitants. It has become an important regional financial center with occupied skyscrapers, a connected metro system, and active nightlife. It is perhaps the greatest success of the Chinese model. These cases prove that the model can work. That building first and waiting later is not necessarily madness, but it is also not a guarantee. Yujiapu, the so-called Chinese Manhattan, was built in 2008 with an iftitah planned for 2019. Today, in 2025, it remains largely empty. Buildings deteriorating, projects canceled, investors who lost everything, local governments sunk in colossal debt with no prospect of return. It is a symbol of excess and failure. Thamstown remains a stage-set city, used mainly for wedding photos, never having become a real residential neighborhood. Tianducheng has improved somewhat, but is still far from its planned capacity. So what is the verdict? Genius or disaster? The honest answer is, it depends. Some cities woke up from their sleep, others remain in an indefinite coma, and some may never wake up. But let's be direct about the real costs of this model, because they are gigantic and frightening. First, debt. Chinese local governments have accumulated trillions of dollars in debt to finance these megalomaniac constructions. Many sold land rights decades into the future. They bet that population growth would come, that future tax revenues would pay the bills. In many cases, that growth never arrived. The result? Entire municipalities practically bankrupt, without enough population, without revenue, without a solution. Second, the real estate bubble burst. In 2021, Evergrande, China's largest developer, collapsed spectacularly with debts exceeding $300 billion. Country Garden, another giant, followed the same path. Thousands of pre-sold apartments were never delivered. Families who invested the savings of a lifetime to buy property were left with nothing. No apartment, no refund, no hope. And there is a third problem, perhaps the most serious of all. Chinese demographics have changed radically. China's population peaked in 2022 at 1,420,000,000 people. Since then, it has been shrinking. In 2024, for the second consecutive year, more people died than were born in China. Projections for 2050 indicate a population of 1,300,000,000. Fewer young people means fewer new families forming, less demand for new housing. Cities were built betting on continuous population growth, and that growth simply stopped. So the question that no one wants to ask out loud is, did China build too many cities, too early, for a population that is no longer going to grow? So, in the end, is China building cities without residents? Technically, yes. But it is not simply madness. It is an urban experiment without precedent in human history. A risky, extremely expensive experiment that sometimes fails spectacularly, but in other cases truly works. When it works, these cities prevent slums, urban chaos, improvised infrastructure, and uncontrolled growth. When it fails, it generates monumental waste, unpayable debts, and real suffering for millions of people. The Chinese model teaches us something fundamental. Centralized planning has immense power to transform entire territories in just a few years. But it also has the power to fail on the same colossal scale. And before laughing too much at China, it is worth remembering. Detroit became a ghost city due to deindustrialization. Spain built entire empty cities during the 2008 real estate bubble. No one has the perfect formula for urban growth. China's ghost cities are a mirror. They show us the limits of humanity's ability to plan the future, the ambition to control the uncontrollable, and the enormous risk of betting billions on something that may never materialize. Some of these cities woke up, others are still sleeping. And the final question is no longer why they were built. It is, will they wake up in time? And you? Do you think this model is brilliant or irresponsible? Leave it in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. There is much more here about urbanism, economics, and geopolitics. See you next time.